All right. All right. There, I thought I was ready, but I wasn't. But now I am, and I hope everybody else is welcome. Welcome to the 8th collection, everybody. So great to see you all here. It's very exciting to be introducing the 8th collection. I was thinking about it as I was starting to consider who might read in March, and realizing that'll be our 12th collection. And that puts us 2/3 of the way to our first anniversary show, which is pretty exciting for me. So I'll be 50 at our first anniversary show, by the way, in April. So yeah, it's really great to see everybody here. I want to make sure I thank Jason right here, who's sneaking through. He is my partner in this venture, and invited me to begin this great live magazine. We've been collaborating on it ever since, and it's really fantastic. We really appreciate Hugo House hosting us. We love this room. You all look beautiful. I love that people adhere to the wear your favorite fancy clothes, and it's really wonderful. Yeah. It's really great to see you all, and I'm really happy that you're all here. We have some great readers for you tonight. I'm going to start things off. I was just telling my friend Ani and my new friend Anna that I took a 3-year break from writing my adult novel to write my children's novel. And I finished that first draft of that children's novel, and now I'm back working again on my adult novel. And I wanted to read to you today the first part of the second chapter. This novel is called Jesus Johnson, and it is about twin cousins who travel from San Diego to Charleston to try to find their dad. So in essence, it's a story about a guy named Jesus who doesn't know his dad. And so yeah, these two fellas are about 19 years old. Their mothers are sisters and their fathers are brothers, which is what makes them twin cousins. They were born the same day. I think it's April 13th, 1994 was their birthday. Anyways, that's probably more than you need to know to understand this chapter. This is chapter 2. It's called Fuck Vegas. Jesus Johnson popped out of the truck the moment it stopped. He spun around in the parking lot, his arms wide, head tilted back, mandolin in hand, and grinned so big I thought his face might rip from the pressure of his glee. I inched my way out of the passenger side before I zipped up my jacket and folded my arms to brace myself against the chill. Charleston bound, we found ourselves in Nevada, still thousands of miles from our destination, with no real plan and no idea if our dads were alive or dead. If they were alive, were they even in South Carolina? How was JJ unfazed by the unknown? That was the difference between us. He was ready to embrace the mystery, and I worried about it. Mama Maria might have said, at least one of you was worried. He danced and grinned. I winced and cringed, unconvinced that this trip had anything to offer us but the heartache of being miles away from our madres. I wasn't sure that I could muster a single step, let alone a million. And if I had missed Mama Maria already, how was I going to feel in New Mexico? How would I feel trudging across America without her sweet kisses and salty tears to ground me and remind me who I was? We gathered by the Dodge under a hazy December sky near the entrance of Circus to say our goodbyes. Empty water bottles scooted across the parking lot in the wind. The air stank like burnt rubber and cheap booze, and my mouth went dry. We'd been there for 5 long minutes, and I was ready to bail. Jesus, however, seemed reborn and revitalized. He was invigorated and took a deep and satisfied breath as if the desert air cleared his sinuses. And leaning against the truck like a bluegrass album cover, he scanned the horizon. I tried to see it all through his eyes and imagined swimming pools filled with half-naked girls, tits and ass exposed to the world under tiny bikinis. JJ must have been hoping to dive right in as he inhaled that crisp winter. He plucked a few notes on his mandolin. If Ricky Skaggs were a half Mexican man-child, he would have looked much the same, a Las Vegas hillbilly ready to take his finger-picking to the streets. Uncle Luis, on the other hand, seemed impatient. He looked at his watch and then in his wallet before he handed me a couple hundos. Watch out for each other. Vegas isn't what it appears to be. Everyone here wants your money. That is what it appears to be, I said. Just watch your backs then. He handed me another 50. I put it all in my pouch. Do we have enough? I asked. You'll make do, he said. From what we managed to save, along with a little nest egg that Grandma Izzy had put away for us, and 500 from our madres, plus that extra roll from Mama Maria, we had about 3,600. It seemed like a lot, but I didn't see it lasting. There was lodging to consider, food, buses, and who knows what else between that circus casino and the Atlantic. We were, after all, in lost fucking Vegas, about the worst place I could imagine having all that cash. Did Jesus have a plan? He picked some dirt from underneath his fingernails and winked at me. I'd seen that look a million times in my life, and it was clear Jesus Johnson did not have a plan. Rosa would kill me if she found out I forgot this, said Uncle Luis. He handed me a flip phone. Just 700 minutes on it, so use it sparingly, but use it. They want to hear from you. I had the urge to call right away, but it didn't seem right. Better to save it for when we really needed something like encouragement or love or one of Mama Maria's dark jokes or more money or an ambulance. A bit of quick math revealed that 700 minutes was about 12 hours. I could talk to my mama for half a day easy. Best to wait for a better time. JJ wandered off to get a closer look at the casino, and Uncle Luis made me promise to make sure he didn't get into any trouble. I assured him there was no need to worry. I was the perfect man for the job. But I tried to imagine a situation I could have any sway over Jesus, and nothing came up. He was the horse I could never tame, the wild stallion that bucked and snorted just to show me he was in charge. I'll make sure he behaves himself, I said. Uncle Luis put his hand on my neck and kissed the top of my head. You're a good kid, he said. Jesus wandered back. Are you still here? He asked. Uncle Luis smiled, good-humored as always, patted him on the shoulder and hopped in the truck. He leaned out the window with his big, crooked grin. I'll see you in Tulsa, he said. He started the Dakota on the second try, circled north, and headed to Wyoming in search of that rare sage. I missed him immediately. We sat on the curb and smoked. I longed to be back in that Dodge, going anywhere but east, preferably back to San Diego, where Mama Maria and I could waste away the days waiting for something better to come along. I finished my smoke, stood up, brushed off the trepidations like OB sand, and tried on my best "this is going to be great" smile. Jesus gave me an eyebrow. Vegas is an ATM built on a vortex, I said, designed to extract and digest as much cash as it can. I clutched my pouch and vowed not to spend a single dime on anything, unless I needed cigarettes, tequila, or a sandwich. We walked down the boulevard and my gut lurched like the enormous roller coaster that stretched for blocks. My legs ached as I looked at the borrowed history of the Roman pillars at Caesar's palace. My skin itched when I took in all the phony tropical cabanas that were so out of place in the desert. Perhaps the most appropriate structure was the pyramid of black glass way down the road, erect like an obelisk. It rooted the attractions like the rectum it was, ready to spill all the waste it could collect out of its borrowed Egyptian motif. Jesus was enthralled by the sights. And with each discovery came a squeal of delight or a gasp of amazement. When he saw the floating spaceship of the stratosphere, his eyes went wide. The fountains of the Bellagio were astounding, but I was unimpressed. We were bombarded by commercials of Pepsi, McDonald's, and a million other corporations flashing on screens amid women with fake tits and pursed lips as if the message was drink a soda, have a burger and fries, and fuck the misery out of my drug-addled eyes. Absolute sex was on display. And the entire city seemed to be propped up on a prostitute's back. Bold neon arrows pointed the way and tantalized a too-good American drawn to Vegas to spend, spend, and spend like it was the cure for misery. But lost Vegas was the misery. And even as JJ ogled at the entirety of the New World skyline, the Eiffel Tower transplanted to neighbor the Statue of Liberty, I became sickly aware that this awful place highlighted our vapid American culture. Vegas was designed to manufacture a fantasy, to impose upon its visitors what it means to have a good time. I sat down, gave up, and dreamed a wave of dying souls would pull me with them down to hell or back to San Diego. Jesus, eyes wide, tapped my shoulder to open my eyes and disrupt my final breath, and pointed at a gigantic crown of pink neon feathers under glitched out lettering of one of his favorite birds, the flamingo. Let's go there, he said. I was in no position to object. Anywhere it was clear was just as bad as everywhere else. There's 14 chapters. I promise he cheers up a little bit later. Thank you so much. That was a joy to read to you all. I've been working on that sucker for maybe too long. I would like to bring up our first scheduled writer at this point. Janine Walker is the author of The Two of Them Might Outlast Me from Groundhog Poetry Press 2022, and the recipient of a 2025 micro grant of Korean poetry translation from Seattle City of Literature. Her poems and translations have found homes in Poetry, Denver Quarterly, Pleiades, Poetry Northwest, Prairie Schooner, and elsewhere. She teaches poetry here at the Hugo House and through Janine's Poetry School. Tonight she has some lyrical narrative poems that tell a story and evoke emotion about everyday and challenging life events. Please welcome Janine Walker.
Thank you. Thank you, Ariel, and thanks for making this great. So this is number 8?
Yeah.
All right. Can we hear it for number 8? I mean, that's exciting. Keep going. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I told Ariel I prefer a cold mic, so, but unfortunately you warmed it up, so I don't know. All right, I'm Janine. I'm going to read some poems. The first two are pretty new. This one is called Leaving. The hammer is still pounding and we can't hear it because it's normalized. It's the sound of every hammer pounding in every new construction in the South End. Helen, my neighbor, always positive, said when I asked, "It's not as big as I thought it'd be, and it doesn't shade our entire yard. We're all fighting against it, but we know eventually all of our homes will be condos." I don't like to admit it or believe in its truth, not Helen's house remodeled after the fire, the one where we carried her elderly mother out of the smoke-filled room and her daughter stood screaming on the lawn. That house can't go, the way of the old tree the builders cut down. It was Marigold's favorite tree, Helen said, finally stunned. Not our house, with our beloved Japanese maple out front, even now as uncaring, unbothered, nonplussed, it sheds all of its leaves. I like to say there's two kinds of readings, one in which you applaud between poems and one in which you don't. I prefer the first kind. This one I'm going to read for my best friend, Steve Barker. It's called Glasses. I couldn't stand not to see, but I didn't see until I sat across from Eugene at Costco, self-described hipster glasses, said if he got wire frames, quote, I'd see too much of my face. He liked my face and my new frames, and he said so as gently from across the counter he adjusted them on the bridge of my nose, moving them lightly back and forth, letting them lilt to the exact right fit. Then he took them again into his possession to turn a screw or two, and once again everything was a blur. Eugene right in front of me, his coworker just behind him, and beyond them both, indecipherable, the large electronics and families pushing their giant carts. What is a family? Hard to break the family up, my husband said later that night, the cat rushing between us. And in that moment, I took my glasses off and looked away. The last time I read here, and was so grateful to be invited back, I was talking about my father had recently passed away and took all of my poems with him. And then about a month later, they came back. And this is one, I didn't read it last time, but this is one that there's a day about a month after he died when I sat in the sun and 7 poems poured out of me. And this was one. My mother's and my father's. After my mother left, it became clear my mother's and my father's. After my mother left, it became my chore to rake the wet leaves through what remained of the autumn grass with the one rake we had, which with its spindly metal fingers reminded me of my father's grandmother's hands, raking the dry skin from her forearm, or if I could imagine it, raking her fingers through the hair of his beloved mother when she was a girl. Being part of a family line means one after another, we watch our loved ones grow old and die. My grandmother was still a young woman when her mother went to live in a nursing home and ate all of her meals from trays. My father was in his late 40s. I was a teen, a college student, mostly unaware of time and tradition, but I would become so. Now I have seen my great-grandmother still, hands folded in her casket, and I have been forced to sing a tremulous song of faith at my grandmother's funeral, and I have witnessed 2 cold men wrap my father's body in a heavy fabric to take him away to be burned. So many are left in my family, but so few whom I love like I loved them. At the end, love is a thing that goes unanswered. I rake my fingers through what remains, and my fingers get caught in the excess. Where will it go? Where will it go? I stand in the autumn rain and know the task is both futile and endless. Love unanswered is a lonely art. Okay, how's it going? Enjoying everything? I am too. Okay. I'm going to read this poem, really different from the other ones. Okay, it's called I Take Lemons. This is one where the title came a lot later than the poem. I was looking out the window when I wrote it. Okay, I take lemons. A lovely remnant of bird shit on the window. Lovely faded, faintly remains. The once was shit, then smear, now ghost body in the window glass, now ghost appearing in the bedroom doorway before you rest with a new lover that once was. The waist of some young bird's morning worm looks now from above like a whale, an orca swimming in the glass sea of the dark wood from the next door neighbor's house, and beside it another dead calf. It takes this to know what we're doing to our beloveds. There's shit on the morning window, nearly extinct. Okay, I've got a few more. Has anyone here been to Haystack Rock? That's in Haystack Rock. It's in Rockaway, right? Or is that the Cannon Beach? No, it's Cannon Beach. Okay. So,
2 weeks ago.
really?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Maybe this will mean something to you. All right, this is a little poem called Haystack Rock. We walked through the shallow surf to touch the large rock's surface. Barnacles extended the length of my fingers. Out on the ocean, a barge bellowed and a small sailboat shuddered. I've never seen so many colors before, colors without name. By the fire, a pen's ink slowly melts. When it dries, it is the start of a poem, though neither I nor the flames can read it. You can stop clapping too if it's getting annoying. I know I'm sure Parker doesn't want to keep doing it, right? Okay, I'm going to read this one poem. This is a little bit longer poem, and I'm kind of curious how you'll like it. It's called On the Two. The line between the toe and heel is endless. Once more it strays singly, then travels around the map, made by shadow crossing shadow, one gray cord against another. Look down. Though you walk, the line does not follow you. The line that touches twice your skin soon leaves you and travels deep into the night, deepened by the stars. And where, steady traveler, where do you go as the streets offer you distance and the shadow that rises from your foot to your eyes to above lifts your cover? If it is a city into which you walk, then deeper into the city you go, or to the unlit streets beside the shallow cornfields and dirt spread out by many hands, either one place or the other, whichever holds you as you step off now of the line that began your walking, reflects the mind that made you wander, drawn to catch the single line that goes from toe to heel and everywhere. If you stumble, the light stars see you laughing. Once more, the light is merely the black cloth that holds your open chest back from day, and the stars, holes made by your questions, and the stars, holes that awaken your quiet notions and witness you searching for an end to your gaze. Do any of you believe in ghosts? Have you been visited by one recently? Like a long time ago then? Yeah. Recently done? Okay. All right, this is not an old poem, this is an old moment captured in a new poem. It's called Dorm Room Ghost. I knew the ghost was him, thin, clothed in layers, round glasses, and skin framed by the dark of the window. He neither flew nor stood, but hovered, existed in the air, on not floor or ceiling, a plurality of duality instead of one, as if we're one when we're alive. Perhaps this was a lesson I took from the ghost. I contain multitudes, a line I'd read and memorized and loved for all the years of my adolescence, but hadn't known how to embrace with my desperate insistence to know who I was. As I lay in that extra long twin bed and looked up at him, some other lover hovering over me for real, I made my choice. Me? Well, me and ghost. I told the guy to leave. The ghost stayed, so close to me. All right, I think I have time for one more, and it's a short one, shortish one. I'm going to read it for Robin and Sherry. Do I have any other students in the audience? And Amy, why not? You know, come on. So we do this thing called the 4-minute poem, and I'm finishing a class now called the 4-minute poem, but all my classes do 4-minute poems, and this is a poem called the 4-minute poem, which was written in 4 minutes. So there you go. But I have a student who thought I was saying formative poem every time I said it. So like a year later, she's like, oh, I thought you were saying this. And so that's where this poem starts. The 4-minute poem. She called it a formative poem by accident, and I love that. This poem here, the same poem I wrote in my youth when I was first claiming myself as a poet. That poem becoming the next and the next, each word unfolding into another, every poem the same. A body of work is a body, cells, tissues, heart, held together by book soft skin. The collected poems of any poet includes the ghosts of how many drafts that didn't see the light of day, poems written by the morning dim, poems burning by the candle skin, the poems scrawled on the palm of a hand, the back of a napkin, on the wall of the moving subway car. They are all the same, the lost and the kept, the revered and the forgotten. When the body passes, the poems remain. We are forever young. Thank you.
Thank you, Janine. It's really great to hear your poems again. It's really something. So personable. Really lovely. Thank you. Janine's a great example of somebody who I didn't know when I started doing this show, that I met because I started doing this show. And we really do consider this a public club, and we love to invite new people in. You know, of course, slots are limited, but that doesn't mean that we don't want you. You just maybe have to wait a little while to get in. But you know, I'm already thinking about the 12th one. So now I had a question about one of your poems there. Is it? Did they film part of Goonies at the Haystack Rock? Yeah, we got a yes here.
Yes.
Yeah, I did mention I'm turning 50 in April, if anybody's wondering why I'm thinking about Goonies, but yeah. I think about that movie more than I should, I think. So one of the reasons we call this a live magazine is because like a magazine, we can bring in all kinds of different things. And that's kind of what our theme is, other than fancy dress, is variety, where we can have literary fiction next to poetry. Sometimes we get drama when we can. My favorite dramatist right over there. And then we get all kinds of things mixed up together, like in a magazine. So we call it a live magazine. And what we love being able to bring in are videos from writers who are not local. My friend Shana Turner in New Orleans sent us a reading from her book. I'll go ahead and introduce her now. Shana Turner's work has appeared in Bayou Magazine, Bridge the Gulf, About Place Journal, on stages of the Boston Center for the Arts and elsewhere. She's a 2025 Lambda Literary Fellow and was a finalist for the 2020 Penelope Niven Creative Nonfiction Award. Front porches, racial tensions, stretch marks, kitchen tables, coming of age, queerness, lives interrupted by violence, natural human magic, and the intricacies of working class culture are threads in Shana's writing. She lives in New Orleans and is working to publish her debut novel, Claiming Caden. And I'll introduce a little bit of it for her. An excerpt from her forthcoming debut novel, Claiming Caden, is the story of Natasha and Sanjay, a queer couple who sacrificed their hard-earned baby fund to travel from post-Katrina New Orleans to the Massachusetts prison, where Natasha's brother, Caden, has died of suicide. Caden's death surfaces memories of searing betrayals among family, chosen and inherited. Natasha and Sanjay are forced to decide where their loyalties lie and how they will define the family that they dream of creating together. Now, please welcome Shana Turner. Here she is.
At some point between the 10th and 11th grades, August, Caden, and Zaida started shooting heroin. The three became characters in stories that extended family members and neighbors would tell about the people who fell victim to drug abuse. Embellished details turned the teenagers' impending downfalls into episodes of a soap opera, or cautionary tales that painted the storytellers that
Whoops. The battery's out there. This is what we're trying to show you what it's really like to run a magazine. See if we can get this fixed. If not, we'll move on to another live reader and see if we can get Shayna up a little later.
I might have to do that.
Okay. We'll bring Shayna up a little later. Let's, should we give it a second?
Let's do it later.
Okay. The other 7 collections went perfectly. I do want to bring up our next live reader now. We'll try to get our live magazine and get Shayna back at some point. Mike Cohen is the author of 2017's Rivertown Heroes, a legal thriller that Kirk has described as fast-paced and nuanced. Mike's poems, short stories, and excerpts have appeared in over 15 publications and anthologies. Mike's short story collection, The Three of Us, including his award-winning short story, The Cantor's Window, was published by Adelaide Books in 2018. His most recent short story, Dropouts, will be published in Bewildering Stories magazine soon. Mike practiced law for over 5 decades before retiring in 2019. Visit Mike at his website, MikeCohenAuthor.com, and at his Facebook page, Mike Cohen Author. We're now with stories featuring the humanely satirical, but leaving characters cautiously optimistic, though not always certain why. Please welcome Mike Cohen.
Thanks, Ariel. I'm going to try to raise this up a bit. This is kind of like the internet. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Well, thanks everybody for being here this evening and for giving me the opportunity to share some readings from my manuscript and novel that is in the wings. It's called Co-op, an organic comedy. It's the late 1970s, and Dr. Tim Burke, a clean-cut yuppie anesthesiologist with a latent crush on the 60s, joins a neighborhood organic food co-op in hopes of communing with his inner dropout. There he meets and falls for an older but wiser femme fatale, once a barefoot commune siren, there known as Starlight, who is now a radical law professor with a flashy wardrobe of beads, dashikis, and silk harem slacks. She also happens to sit on the board of the elite Beecher Montessori preschool, where Tim and his ambitious architect wife, Jennifer, are desperate to land a spot for their volatile 3-year-old son, Griffin, so Jennifer can get back to designing office towers for America's power elite companies. As Tim stumbles into the co-op's patchouli-scented power games, he's forced to choose what he really wants: a spiritual awakening, a sexual adventure, a second chance at counterculture freedoms he never experienced, or just a foot in the door of the Beecher Montessori preschool. So to understand what the problem is of getting into the Beecher preschool, you have to know a little about Griffin, who is Jennifer and Tim's little boy, who's 3.5 years old. Can you imagine naming a little boy Griffin without a consequence? At times, my son behaved much like a mythical monster, or an impulsive winged raptor, or a rocket with no control panel but armed with a nuclear device in its nose cone. I've lost count of the times that I returned balls, blocks, teddy bears, candy bars, or crayons to some weeping child that 3.5-year-old Griffin had mugged, or found myself profusely apologizing to some outraged mom, a white circle of anger around her mouth, as she demanded punishment for Griffin's pillaging raids. Believe me, I was never able to mollify any one of the moms of Griffin's victims. I admit failure. Griffin could not be stopped, no matter how hard I gripped his arm or shook him in an effort to loosen his grip on the priceless playthings snatched from another. Griffin would clutch the purloined object like it was the golden fleece, and he, Jason. As I say, don't name a little boy Griffin and expect an angel. Yet from afar, Griffin was so fetching. His rambling, curly red hair, freckles maniacally racing across his face, his green eyes emphatically denying that he was anything but an angel. At a distance, Griffin could melt the ice cubes in any mother's mint julep. However, up close, watch out. Griffin's behavior put him in the class of one of Attila's Huns in training. And with that, I'll read chapter 8 of the experience Griffin had at the Beecher Montessori preschool. It's called A Trip to a Different Planet. Griffin visits the Beecher School. Every working couple in our Capitol Hill neighborhood wanted their 4-year-old at Beecher Montessori. Why? Common sense, proximity, that was pivotal to everyone. The preschool, located in an old house, was down the corner and around the hill from our home. I could watch Griffin there in nice weather and be down at the hospital in no time. It was the perfect child warehouse. But that's not what the owners, Harold and Hope Amster, had in mind. No, they were passionate teachers who had totally bought off on Montessori education methods aimed at raising a generation of normalized children. What was about the normalized child that was so great? Who wanted to be normalized? It sounded like, to me, a curse of conformity, au contraire. The normalized child was an idea dreamed up by a nice lady in Italy, Signora Maria Montessori, who might have had a chip on her shoulder, maybe because in her day, end of the 19th century, there were not a lot of girls allowed in Italian schools. Anyway, she decided to launch a revolution in primary education with a school system based on the belief that a normalized child would operate with his or her own energy on his or own, on projects that each had chosen on his or her own. The operative Montessori endgame was that the ideal normalized child, having been thoroughly doused with Mimi Montessori's methods, would exhibit learning curiosity forever. Ambitious. How would all of that be delivered to a 3.5-year-old who still napped for an hour in the afternoon? Okay, so much for philosophy. A blinding glimpse of the obvious. Geography and not pedagogy was the most important factor to us. We were in on the preschool moment for purely selfish reasons and nothing else. We were willing to be fed Mimi Montessori's views that some might call a bunch of hoo-ha, but being honest about it, not caring about normalization in any way. Let's face it, our goals were at best parallel to what Beecher Montessori and the Amsters were pitching. Frankly, I thought this pseudo-philosophy of somehow organizing a child's curiosity that was at the heart of the Montessori method sounded more like rich kid stuff. To me, a normalized childhood at school was learning to write so you could pass messages during class while avoiding the teacher's attention. and learning when to start running fast enough to avoid getting bullied by the older kids at either 1, playtime, 2, lunch, 3, on the way home, or 4, all of the above. The school was where you learned to cope with the ups and downs that life would present. To me, every child should hope to recognize what was about to come down and get out of the way. In other words, to know which way the wind was blowing without a meteorologist's report. Let's face it, preschools made sense because they released the parents to make more money than the tuition that the preschools charge. I could live with that. On the day that I took Griffin for the preview visit at the Beecher Montessori, I led him to the door, gripping his little cool and dry paw in my sweaty hand. There in the open doorway to greet us stood Hope Amster, her long brown hair flowing down her back. She was dressed in a gingham granny dress and what appeared to be combat boots. Her open face, free of makeup and with a faint trace of hair on her upper lip, glowed with a huge welcoming grin, as if she was expecting me to deliver a 6-figure rebate check from the IRS. Hope held in front of her an iridescent purple plastic mini dinosaur figure. "Hello, Griffin," she both exclaimed and whispered simultaneously, which some might call speaking in Montessori. There is something about whispering that makes words possess different meanings than when spoken in a loud voice. Hope waggled the mini dino doll in front of my little son as if it were bait. "I want you to say hello to Cheops," she continued, watching to see if Griffin would take it. "Cheops is the name of a famous kind of dinosaur." Griffin pulled his hand from mine, his face unchanged, as if he were a gambler who had just looked down at his down card in blackjack. Slowly, he reached for Cheops, which Hope generously surrendered. Then he wordlessly studied the small figurine, moving it up and down in front of his face, looking for signs of life. In that second, Griffin's freckled, bespectacled face emitted an aura of curiosity right out of the Montessori playbook. He seemed engaged, thoughtful, visually processing Cheops' small aspects and capacities. I wonder if the real Cheops had in fact been purple. Hope beamed and for a second turned to me, mind melding. "You see, so bright," just as Griffin went into his 3-year-old windup, holding Cheops high, as if it were a purple baseball and he were a pitcher in the bottom of the ninth with 2 out and the bases loaded. Taking a step, he hurled Cheops into the branches of a nearby hydrangea plant, where it dangled for a moment before dropping out of sight. Hope tried to maintain what I could only call Montessori equanimity. "I don't think Cheops will like it there," she whispered as a troubled look crossed her brow. It was as if she had spotted a masked burglar about to furtively clamber in a window on the side of the Montessori school. By then it was too late. Griffin, who could move with surprising quickness, was past us and into the large Montessori work area in the house's big room, festooned with its separated table stations, equipped with sand, clay, paint, and blocks, all manned by quiet, industrious, little normalized wannabe, each toiling away, each utterly silent, each one working away alone, oblivious to the arrival of a mini hurricane. Griffin turned toward one little girl who paid him no attention as she worked on her pile of alphabetic blocks made of soft plastic, each bearing on its 6 sides a single raised letter, 1 letter per block. She watched with a surprised look as Griffin seized a crimson one bearing a raised A on each of its surfaces. Hope rushed over to the little girl's station, but still softly speaking in Montessori. "Yes, Griffin," Hope hushed, barely loud enough to be heard. "The letter blocks are terribly interesting, aren't they? And after Julie is done, you are welcome to study them right here." Griffin's eyes went wide open at that, first glaring in dismay at Hope and then in rage at Julia, who with good sense began to step away from this intruder who was breaking Mimi Montessori's key rule of separation. But she was too late. Griffin leaned over to press his crimson A block with a conking sound against Julia's forehead, leaving a faint scarlet A in her flesh. I wondered if Hope was thinking Hester Prynne as I was. Julia gave out a wail, which unnormalized all the children who looked across the room toward the sudden swells of noise, abandoning their projects and traveled over to take a closer look at Julia's new imprinted scarlet letter on her head. Hope quickly took Julia in her arms. Griffin, you need to say I'm sorry. We share here, she murmured, staring at me as if I had trained Griffin as a ninja assassin. I felt no guilt. It was not, I reasoned, that this was the first time Hope had seen two children who simultaneously grabbed the same thing at the same time. As I attempted but failed to regain control over Griffin before his next assault, he purposefully spun back toward the front door that was still open, flinging the crimson block into the very same hydrangea plant as purple Cheops, the crimson color contrasting nicely with the bush's greenery and emerging yellow blossoms. Clearly, this was not going well. I tried to spin it a bit. Good news, I said nervously. I've spotted both Cheops and the A block. I'm sure I can retrieve them if you would watch Griffin for a moment. Oh, no, said Hope, her look of alarm and divergence to her librarian's tone and volume. She stood and forced a jagged-edged smile at me. This would be the perfect time, a wonderful time for us to wrap up this visit, this fabulous visit, and for you and Griffin to say goodbye. This will also be a perfect time, she added, her smile disappearing, for you to teach Griffin a lesson in how we treat our neighbors. This last message was delivered as if this was the last time Hope intended to ever lay eyes on Griffin and me. Despite its finality, I had to admit that Mr. Rogers could not have delivered that message with more kindliness than Hope as she ushered us out of the Montessori neighborhood. With Griffin in his usual cipherish silence giving me no clue of his thinking, I recognized that in his isolation, he was just in the normalized mind space where Mimi Montessori wanted her students to be. He simply was uninterested in waiting for his turn. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah. So, Mike, that was really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us. I didn't know quite what to expect, and it exceeded whatever it was that I was expecting. Thanks so much for that. So cool. I never would have thought to write that. That's just really something. Thank you. So we're probably going to figure out this situation after our next reader. Our next reader is someone I met at Goddard College, and I bring that up because Goddard was where I managed to get an MFA, and it really is a huge inspiration to this event. After our classes, we would all gather in the quarters in Fort Worden, in Port Townsend, and we would share our work, and it was really something because we hadn't signed up for that part of it. You know, that sort of happened somewhat organically, and it was really some of the most rewarding moments of that program for me. And it was a big inspiration to this. So when Jason wanted to do something here, it was just kind of an exactly perfect next step for what we were already doing at Goddard. So that gives you some background. But now I want to bring up Liz Killebrew. She's a Seattle writer known for her poetry, short fiction, and essays. She is the recipient of the Miracle Monocle Award for Innovative Writing, and her fiction has been shortlisted for the Calvino Prize. Her historical hybrid work, The River People, is a haunting and lyrical exploration of 19th century westward expansion into the Pacific Northwest. Through the intertwined journeys of Marilla, John, and Walter, each navigating rivers that serve as both roads and unforgiving forces. The book weaves together fiction, historical documents, memoir, and poetry. And here was some poetic historical fiction. Please welcome Liz Killebrew.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to read from The River People tonight. It's my book that came out earlier this year. You can order it from any bookstore, but it's also at the Seattle Public Library and Third Place Books. So the stories in this book were actually based on family history. My family immigrated to the Pacific Northwest in the 1850s. So the setting for this first passage I'll read is at the Snake River crossing on the Oregon Trail. It was autumn. He was leading the livestock across the river, his horse worn beneath him, the chill rainwater dripping down the brim of his hat. With the reins wrapped tight around his fist, he began to cross. Whoa, girl, whoa. He patted his horse's neck as she sidestepped into the river. Spooked by the rapids, she whinnied loud and sharp, kicked up water cold as ice. The river soaked into his clothes and chilled him. He tried to steady her, but she bucked. He fell into the wild river, heard his father calling his name. His horse reared above him as he groped for the reins. One powerful hoof hit his head. The world went silent and gray. Rushing water, fording the currents, wagon and oxen following the rest. Rain and thunder, she's soaked to the bone. But her brother has it the worst. In the water with father, coaxing the animals across. The wagon lurches. Father's outside yelling orders to Henry, but something's wrong. Henry's screaming, then he's gone. Marilla tears open the wagon flaps, receives a mouthful of sky. Father's strangely silent. They've stopped halfway across. The river churns. The wagon lists. They're going to be tipped over and carried away, and mother cries out loud, and father whips the oxen, and they somehow ford the river. But Henry's gone, sucked down into the muddy waters. Snake River has swallowed him whole. They never find his body. Winter is coming, and the family presses on. West and then west. There is nowhere else to go. He wasn't in the habit of looking for bodies as he paddled down the river, but it was the smell that caught him first. The sweet, bitter stink of death, a smell he knew from butchering pigs at the farm, a smell he tried to avoid. Then he saw it, a slack blue body swathed in muddy rags, bumping gently against the old snag hanging over the river bend. The build was slight and short, some mother's son, no doubt, although by now his facial features were well worn away. Llewellyn put his canoe onto shore. He lifted the body out by the shoulders of its cotton shirt. The weave still held, even as the edges of the flesh sloughed away like spilled jelly. The stench was unbearable. He laid the body on the riverbank. Sewn inside the boy's coat, he found a name tag inscribed with indelible ink, Henry Washburn. With his knife, he cut off the tag. He turned Henry's pockets inside out. A tiny silver horseshoe shone bright against the dark river soil. He picked it up. The stench was unbearable, but all too familiar. Lord knows how many boys he would have buried if he'd stayed home for the war. As it was, he barely had the will to bury this one. He piled the body high with a cairn of river stones. He went away from there. So this next passage will follow Walter, and he is a U.S. soldier fighting in the Nez Perce War in eastern Washington in 1877. The sun is a long, slow throw of a silver dollar. Private Walter Washburn hasn't slept all night. His army horse is all muscle and froth, pulling at the reins, headstrong, unlike his father's mild mares. This is the cavalry in newly minted Washington territory on ancient Nez Perce lands. He didn't sign up for this. 50 men on horseback, 50 more on foot. The gray wash of the plains like filthy bathwater. The silence is a sound he can hear in his spine. Out of the blinding sun, the first arrows fall. Men and horses scream. Walter sights his rifle, but there's no one he can see. The arrows come from everywhere and nowhere, all hunting for his chest. They'll seek him out like dogs and find a notch in his ribs, or the nape of his neck, or the tender meat of his thigh. He fires a few rounds at the rim of the valley, where the enemy must be hiding, but with nothing in sight, it's no use. He tells himself he's had a good life. He wishes he'd written to his ma. The horse bucks and sidesteps the bodies of the men who've already been hit, the men with whom Walter has shared bed and bread, the men older and younger than himself. They are curled around their wounds like children, clutching the wet red of their stomachs, like women who know the time of their labor has come. But not Walter. No, he is unhurt. He is on his horse, clinging to life, reloading and firing, the stench of horse musk and spent gunpowder filling his nose, his eyes squinting along the vast blue horizon, burned by the unfamiliar sun. Afterwards, the world rings in his ears. A hand on his shoulder. Men drag the bloated corpse of his horse away. He can walk. He is covered with blood, but not wounded. It is the blood of the horse, after all, that draws the biting flies to him. They gorge like leeches. He picks up his empty rifle. The battlefield is scored with bodies. He sees a few Nez Perce, but more U.S. men, speared by feathered arrows. He thinks of flight, of prairie grouse rising in flocks. He is suddenly hungry, suddenly thirsty. He wants to plunge his face in that puddle of mud and drink it. He wants to go home. He wants to kill everybody who stands in his way. Only he doesn't. He was here before, in his mother's womb. He knows this is not his land, not his people. The sky is so wide here, it hurts. They feed him whiskey and water, salt pork and gruel. When he is no longer hungry, he thinks. He thinks of trees and cold streams, mountains that pierce your heart with their peaks. He thinks he's lost his mind coming out here. Better that than lose his soul back home. The thinking threatens to keep him awake, so he asks for another drink. Thank you.
I feel like the sky is so wide it hurts, bears repeating. Thank you, Liz. When I saw the phrase poetic historical fiction, I didn't quite know what that meant, and now I do. And you nailed it, so thank you so much. That was so cool. So we are about to take a break here. We do have 3 more wonderful live readers coming up, and hopefully a couple of video readers as well. It's going to be about 10 minutes. The restrooms are halfway back. Maybe say hello to somebody you haven't met or hang out with someone you know, grab a drink from Jason, whatever you want. I'll be here to regather your focus in 10 minutes.
Yeah, but she also brought it. Yeah, I really went in and right.
Oh, thank you. Yes, that's right. Quebec. Yeah. It's a scarf, but it's not a tie. It's like Quebec.
I will not. No, I can't. I think it was on Seattle. Yeah, there are a lot of ski goers. It's like San Francisco, like walking through the waterfront, like back up this way. It's like, the weather's not that really warm, like where
At some point between the 10th and 11th grade,
it's probably like this all year. Yeah, like the silver is like it's yeah, that's what, well, you know, last week I was working here, this week's doing, so I was out with this. It was great. It was fine. Great. Like, I worked till 2:30, 3 o'clock. This week, maybe because the other teams, like Monday morning, I was supposed to have, I would stand every 10 minutes. So I woke up like 6. It's pitch black dark. I was like, I can't do this. Just like this like we have you know, I can possibly do myself out. I think that this week has been totally different. Last week was easy, and this week's maybe because I didn't ask them to listen sometimes. So it's like when you come off the Kirby Hill Road, like Harvard and stuff. 2 blocks off you know, right the Capitol Hill. Oh, yeah. It's cool neighborhoods. Yeah, there's the Christmas nice. It's across from the so I learned about the Kroger, so like QXC. That's 6 movies, like KFC.
Oh, nice.
There's an espresso bar. I'm not a big coffee drinker, but I kind of do it. I'm gonna wake up and so I walk into a coffee and bar-wise, there's a so I like the flip box. It's like an old it's an old bar. It's where Bruce Newsmeyer was. It's right on near like it's like the it's right there. So that block on that curve it is. That place is pretty cool. I honestly like she's been busy and stuff. So sometimes I'm like funny time. And then I had my like local bar. It's called Tavern. It's right by that. Broadway. It's like a bar. It's really good.
And I would say,
yeah, they always got this. It was like, oh yeah, you were out. That was like, you never know when you can only reach a city. You used to a small town.
So my goodness.
I got regulars and parties and stuff like that. There's like everybody here sort of feels like it's all just the deluxe place was like, we were sitting there like guys were walking in back. Hey, what's up? Go to a bar. This place where we are right now. They asked me what bars I found.
This was, yeah, this was. I know, well, it's much bigger than.
Yeah. Well, because I think they lost the park. There used to be a park. But I got and then so I don't because I was really hard to pay attention. I'm like, I just do that on rental. I gotta make sure the blinds are precise. Yeah, like everything I saw, that's when there's a call or this is like, what kind of classes do you want? Those can be it's like whatever, abstract prose or whatever you guys. The biggest one, the biggest block writing, writer speed dating. That was the number 104 class.
And then I yeah, you're all interested in your legal lawyer.
Oh my God, it's like, I'm counting down the days. I don't write, she's the writer. I just write briefs. You're probably not brief. Yeah. Well, you pay by the hour. Well, not by the word. Not yet. We'll see. With AI, that might be the next step.
Try with 2 words and see how it works. We win.
Yeah.
And then that's it. Then you're done.
I've written some good snarky things in my time, but I've never been after it. What kind of law did you write?
Pretty much all over the board at different times. I was prosecutor's office for almost 8 years. I was a law clerk with the state Supreme Court before that.
Here?
Yeah, I practiced started my own law firm, and I merged with a firm called Lane Powell in Des Moines, Texas. And I left Lane Powell and my practice as a partner at Dorsey Whitney.
Hello, my friend. If you can believe it, that's 10 minutes already. I'll give you a couple minutes
50
to
years.
finish up what you're doing, and we'll get started soon.
Well, I enjoyed the practice, but at 75, you just say to yourself, no.
Yeah. Oh, you're on
I'm
75.
kind of believing much older than that. But it was a wonderful experience. I was aware. Not everybody can say that.
No, I love
What about you? What are you doing?
I do. I started as a litigator, commercial litigation.
Okay, my friends, I think we'll get started again here in a moment. We have our lovely tech back on.
It's a lot better than litigation. 22 years in, I like it.
You know, I enjoy it.
I'm hoping I don't have to use my teacher voice to get everybody to come to attention.
It's tough.
Sit down, Daniel. All right, I'm so happy that everybody is enjoying each other's company, but we got to get started again. I just wanted to point out that we have a QR code here. It is the same QR code that's on the back of these cards that are all around. That does take you to the collections webpage, where you can always see what's coming up next. There's links to the Hugo House on there. There are links to many of the authors' websites or Substacks from there. Lots of information to be found. It also links to my website, which you can see more about me if you'd like. I imagine you'd like that very much. But yeah, and also there are archives that I posted from previous collections as well. You can view the videos we've taken, some of the live streams, some of the videos there. So please do that if that fits your fancy. So I'm going to bring up our first reader of our second set here now. Born in the vibrant heart of Bangkok, Thailand, and now a Seattleite of over 3 decades, Nat is a poet at heart, having self-published her collection of poetry and verse, 365 Days of Grief, happens to be right here. A work that explores healing and grief through words. With a BA in art history from the University of Washington and an MA in museum studies from the University of Oklahoma, Nat has spent the last decade working in the arts industry in Seattle's non-profit sector, most recently right here at the Hugo House. And now with some excerpts from 365 Days of Grief, please welcome Nasseri Pudavan.
Hi, everyone. It's been a while since I've actually read my work out loud, so please bear with me. I didn't actually include any information about what I'll be reading tonight, but this is my lovely book that I self-published, 365 Days of Grief, and it is based off of my personal experiences of grief, and it's the most vulnerable I've ever been in writing. It took everything out of me to create all 50 of these poems. So I'm going to start reading from the first section. So every single chapter of this collection is based off a different stage of grief. And so the first section is going to be denial. Have you ever read something that simply made your heart stop? So strange how seeing such a specific arrangement of words can make your heart just stop. The second poem from Denial is going to be a very short one. I can now find solace in my insomnia because in my delirium-filled state, I can pretend this is a horrible nightmare I've yet to wake up from. And then we have the anger section. I also haven't been showing my beautiful newt illustrations, but because grief is such an intense and powerful feeling, and my words are often very heavy, I wanted to kind of add this juxtaposition between the heaviness of the words with very cute newt illustrations. So every single section of my book has newts Fortunately, you can't quite tell, but they're newts doing various things. And I'll be sure to share a different newt with you as I'm reading the section as well. These were illustrated by my dear friend Stephanie Patterson. And once again, this is from the anger section. I want to tear out the sadness within myself and transform it into something more tangible. Something to be thrown as piercing and sharp as a javelin. I will hit my mark and it will puncture the heart of my foe. Hence the javelin throwing newt. And then the next poem from Anger. With your hands, you made the decision to end a life. Out of loathing, rage, and intoxicated mind. May that decision continue to plague all of your waking moments and curse all of your forthcoming joy. May you never have another day of light. And now I have bargaining. This is the title page. All of my title pages also have a giant new illustration. And this is going to be the next newt. It is a treasure chest newt. Maybe all I desire to see is your smiling face once more. I don't think there's anything I would part with. None of the treasures in this world could compare with being able to see you again. And some of my poems are going to be a little bit longer. The ones that I've read for the sake of time have been my shorter ones, but this next one is a few pages. It's called An Ode to Eurydice. Come back to me, whispered the solitary desire of my heart. I would sacrifice this world and all of its silver beauty for you. I would traverse the depths of Hades, around the grotesque, towards the darkened realms, past the lake of forgetting, through the flames of torment. Here I would play a song so beautifully it would cause the stones to stir and unleash the sorrows within my being, until even the unmovable would be moved. A deal would be struck for me to proceed ahead of you, but not to gaze upon your face, lest all it be lost. As a whisper of doubt crossed my mind, a deal too good to be true, I would proceed knowing this fear. And I would not dare look back or risk even the briefest of moments. I could not suffer the chance of losing you again. I would hold onto the hope that you would be following with silent footsteps until we made our way to the surface. And it is here that within the sun you would be there beside me, as the warmth of your hand intertwined within mine. And as we sighed, breathed a sigh of sweet relief. But herein lies the tragic desire of my heart. It will always feel as if I gaze back only to lose you once more, because the realm of Hades is somewhere that no mortal can find. And so the story will end, as all stories often do, and this world will eternally remain a darker place without you by my side. And just a little bit of context as well. I wrote this collection of poetry and prose after the love of my life was murdered in 2017. And so writing was the first thing I thought of to process my grief, because it is really hard, to grieve. And so I've always been a writer, and writing and the act of creating really saved my life. And apologize that I get emotional a little bit while I'm reading this. It's been a very long time since I've read these words out loud. Depression. So this is from the depression section. As you can tell, the little newt is in the boat right there, and he is traversing this very stormy sea. Depression. Gently, I pull myself out of bed when my deepest desire is to stay, and allow myself to decay into the earth where I cannot be found. And I have a little newt stuck in a little dirt mold right there, or dirt mound. And then the next poem, in Depression, this was written after the hardest moment of my entire life. It's the most emotionally vulnerable I've ever been in my writing as well. So please bear with me if I get a little bit emotional. As hard as it was to experience, after I'd written this poem, it felt like a weight was lifted. So it was very necessary to the healing process. This is called blissful ignorance. I wanted so badly to remain forever tucked away in blissful, beautiful ignorance and denial. But I was not given that luxury. I would have basked in the belief that you had escaped from this entire hell. Perhaps to be lounging on a sun-soaked beach where the water laps the edges, sending you to a peaceful slumber and a whiskey on the rocks in hand, the sun warming your skin. I did not believe you'd be gone, so I screamed, I sobbed as my heart tore, and I desperately called every hospital in the vicinity. My hopes were high as they told me you had not been admitted, so I breathed a sigh of momentary relief. Then with sickening realization that there is one more place that needed to be called. Somewhere no one should ever have to call to find a loved one. So hesitantly, I dialed the morgue and I held my breath. I waited. A few moments felt like eternity. I held my breath. The speed of my heart, a slow, aching thump, thump, silence. Painfully slow silence. Until the man's voice spoke again, a confirmation, an apology. At that moment, my heart had finally broken, completely and utterly. My mind refused to register anything beyond those words. My illusion shattered. My beautiful fantasy of you on that sun-soaked beach could no longer be a reality, as the rest of my sanity had tumbled into darker and darker places. All right, that was the hardest poem, so thank you for bearing with me. It gets a little bit lighter from here because we are in the acceptance part, and this is acceptance, and this is Newton the Newt, surrounded by the cosmos. This is called The Visitation Dream, and it's about a 3-page long poem or so. This dream I had was unlike any others. I remember it so clearly, even to this day. The visitation dream, they had called it. When your loved one passes on, they will come to say goodbye to you, to ensure you they have made it to the other side safely, and to give you their love. This notion exists in every culture in some shape or form. However, I do not believe in gods, demons, or in angels, but I held on to hope that you would come to say goodbye. During that time, I could not sleep, I could hardly eat. My mind was gone, and yet somehow my body still moved. I had to wait 17 days after you passed, but you finally came to me. Now this dream did not feel like a dream. This figure led me down into the depths of a cavern so vast. There was no beginning or end, but such kindness in its voice. It only spoke gently that someone wished to see me. I could not tell the sex of it, for it was something beyond my own comprehension. Was it a god, a demon, or an angel? Or was it simply a figment of my pure, unfiltered madness accompanied by my lack of sleep and malnutrition? Finally, after what felt to be an eon, at the bottom of a cavern came a wall. Now the closest thing to lunacy and sheer fantasy I could use to explain what my eyes saw in front of me was a portal. The figure had given me a reassuring smile and proceeded to open it for me. I walked through. Another cavern, desolate, dismal, scarce, at the edge of the world, or somewhere in between. All I knew was that I felt it was not a place of permanency, only a place to wait. You were there. You held both my hands in yours, and you spoke quickly, stating we did not have very much time, over and over the same phrase. In my dreamlike state, I did not know what to say. However, only I knew that in my deepest of hearts, there was you. You were not a figment of my imagination, but I also knew this was a place I should not have traveled to. There was danger in lingering. We did not have much time. You refused to look in my eyes, ashamed. I could not speak, but we were running out of time. So you simply rested your head on my chest and refused to look at me. You were sorry that we could not have been together in this life. You did not speak any of these words, but it felt so clear as day. So I spoke the first things that came to my mind. I could have said a million things, but the only one I wanted you to know at that very moment spilled from my lips. I asked you if you knew that you were the love of my life. Then, the very last thing I remember, He finally looked up from my chest as soon as those words were uttered. Those blue eyes pierced into mine for the briefest moment, and I had woken from my slumber. By an unknown caller, but for the first time since it happened, I had woken up so wholly and utterly at peace. And I have a little newt going through a portal. You can kind of see the newt butt right there. And then you can kind of see at the very end of my poem, the newt head kind of popping up out of that portal. And this is called the finale because it is the final poem in my entire book. Even though I cannot find peace within your permanent absence from this world, I can find solace within the fact that life can go on. I can find reprieve in the knowledge that I did not end my life that night, not in the following months to come with a knife poised over my heart, despite my anguish and my heartbreak. I did not drown myself in languor and reveries. The blades did not kiss my skin and paint the walls scarlet. I survived the worst pain of my life, and I've lived to tell you this tale. I survived suffering into a collection of healing and far too many words. However, the moral of the story is this: life does and it will go on, even if you have to discover how to live without a part of your heart. I know you are hurting from the many wounds upon your soul, full of festering and gnarling edges, with the same knife held over your own heart. But if I had given up that night, I would have never found love anew or found my reason to keep living despite the endless ache. It's quite strange how life works out, isn't it? How things such as happiness and bliss seem to find you just when you believe they would never find you again. Just when you thought they had abandoned and forsaken you, they give you something else worth staying for. Thank you, everyone.
Wow, Nat, thank you so much. And thank you for modeling vulnerability. I think that that's really important for us as writers and readers and listeners and grievers, all of us, I think. It goes really appreciated. So thank you so much for that. We are going to try to bring back Shana now. As a reminder, she's going to be reading an excerpt from her forthcoming debut novel, Claiming Caden, the story of Natasha and Sanjay, a queer couple who sacrificed their hard-earned baby fund to travel from post-Katrina New Orleans to the Massachusetts prison, where Natasha's brother Caden has died by suicide. Caden's death surfaces memories of searing betrayals among family, chosen and inherited. Natasha and Sanjay are forced to decide where their loyalties lie and how they will define the family that they dream of creating together. Now please re-welcome Shana Turner.
At some point between the 10th and 11th grades, August, Caden, and Zaida started shooting heroin. The three became characters in stories that extended family members and neighbors would tell about the people who fell victim to drug abuse. Embellished details turned the teenagers' impending downfalls into episodes of a soap opera, or cautionary tales that painted the storytellers as superior for making better choices. People often placed extra blame on Caden, turning the hard facts of his childhood into assumptions about him being the damaged one that led August and Zaida astray. Natasha and her mother Maisie knew better. They had witnessed August become more brazen about his addiction as he went from sneaking around to no longer bothering to hide his drug-involved activities. They knew it had in fact been August who dragged Caden into the web of misery. One quintessential New England fall day of October of 1996, when the leaves had turned glorious gold and fiery red just before falling to the ground, Natasha sat on top of the toilet lid in the bathroom of her mother's apartment as August stood over the sink, looking into the mirror, preparing to go out for a fix. Maisie knelt in the space between the doorway and August, begging her 16-year-old son to stay. The right hinge of the toilet lid was loose under Natasha's legs. She felt little control of her tense body, and it took great effort to sit squarely in the center of the lid so it would not slide and snap out of place. With trembling breath, she watched the devastating scene play out. August was relentless. Red Adidas running pants, 3 white stripes down the side. Her twin brother leaned over the porcelain sink, wetting his fingers and slicking them through his short brown waves, polishing himself. He managed to look well kept with clear taut skin, eyes still shiny, a slivered ring of dark brown around jade green, just like Natasha's. Throughout his addiction, he wore clean, stylish clothes and was charming when he turned it on. It was enough to believe he was healthy. Maisie looked atrocious, kneeling on the tile. Mucus ran from her nose, eyelids swollen and face patched pink, her fingers gripping the bottle of August's methadone pills. Every muscle in Natasha's body clenched tight at the sight of their desperate mother. "I'll give you more methadone, August," begged Maisie from her knees. "August, baby, please don't go out there." Her voice cracked. "Please, August, I'll give you more. Get off the floor." August whipped his neck from facing his reflection in the vanity to glare down at his mother. "Stop being so dramatic, Ma." Rage rushed Natasha as she watched her brother return his attention to the mirror, pulling back his cheeks and baring his teeth to inspect them. The irony of clean teeth to shoot up with. "August, I beg you, don't go out there," Maisie whispered, her throat sandpaper coarse, pride slaughtered, raw despair in her motherly pleas. "We can't, Ma." Natasha lifted herself from where she sat, each limb stiff and shaking. "We can't make him stay." Maisie's cry pierced the air. She flopped her body onto the cool tile and relinquished the control she had fought to maintain. Maisie's determination to beg her son for his own dear life wasn't nearly as strong as his Jones and bones. August scoffed, disgusted, as he pushed past his mother, whose depth of devastation matched her love for her once sweet baby boy. Natasha heard his heavy footsteps trace the path of their home, from the bathroom, down the hallway, to the kitchen, and out the apartment doorway, onto the staircase that led to the street. The door slammed shut, with August now on the other side.
Shayna is another Goddard alum, and don't think I'm promoting Goddard because it shut down. I would promote it if it were still around, but it was a casualty of, I'm not sure what, but it was a casualty, unfortunately. Wow, I love her writing. I want to bring up now another writer. This is going to be Stephen Muir. Stephen Muir writes stories about dreams, personal and societal, whether it's the idiosyncrasies of an individual's dream or society's strangely unfolding evolution. Muir seeks to express life's absurdity and beauty. His writing draws deeply and often semi-autobiographically from his lived experience here in Washington and abroad. Brushed over with a stroke of whimsy for good measure, he was the short story runner-up for the 2023 Hastings Book Festival out of Southern England. His first book, Professor Nim's Possibility Collapser and Other Stories, is available now. And here with a short story and a few poems, please welcome Stephen Muir.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to start with a short poem also about grief. It's called As If Grief. As if enough grief could turn back time, as if frustration sufficiently expressed could undo what's been done. How to let go of the way things have gone is something I've never been taught. And so, learning it for myself, the lesson sinks deeply into my heart. Summer rainstorm on parched earth. Now, this is the story that Ariel mentioned was the runner-up for the contest 2 years ago. It's called Michaela's Kaleidoscope. Take a boat to a certain island in the Pacific Northwest, temperate and emeraldine. The waves, unless in slack, will lap up entreatingly on its rocky shore. Walk, pedal, or drive to the island's northern end, its wettest part, replete with fir forests, salal and salmonberry understories, red cedar and alder groves. You will see lichened lime trees and moss species, fluffy and green several shades between, covering many things. You must shake hands with these beings, so to speak, wave back to the wispy Usnia clan as they waft and welcome by the wind. Otherwise, you won't see it. Otherwise, you won't find it. You could easily pass it by. Yes, that's right. If you do not honor the plant people here, it very well could remain hidden to your eye. That is how she intended it. Go down a few long, straight gravel roads, right angles, evidence of a certain ape species with an apparent affinity for quadrangles. Past the second eye-catching, moss-covered boulder you encounter, turn left. The street names are all gone. The plant kingdom, in its entropic intelligence, has vined long and, grown profuse and ambling over, taken down these signs. Now you should find yourself on a narrower gravel road, not as flat, and with dripping forest canopy overhead. Shadows multiply tremendous, and you are in a darker place, crowded out by all the photosynthesizers. The road here twists and turns a bit as you find yourself going slightly uphill. At the Y in the road, bear right. Soon you'll reach a clearing, the edge of a couple acres of overgrown field. The forest is taking it back slowly, like a once shaven face left alone, like a wound slowly healing. Following the gravel to its end, you'll see a dense stand of young trees to the left, surrounding a small pond, and to the right, a two-story house falling apart. Here is where it is. Here is where you'll find it. Carefully push open the door. It won't be locked. The house could be in any sort of shambles. Who knows what the insects, rodentry, and birdage have done here in the absence of humanity, turning this found spoils cache into their Xanadu for a time. Ignore them respectfully as you walk past what was once the kitchen and what was once the living room, and head up the first flight of stairs you see. They will creak and groan, but continue onwards sure of foot. You have my word, the ones that aren't already broken won't break. It is likely at this point that the bed in this room has been worn beyond recognition by untold rat generations. So it is. On the night table by the bed, it remains. In its box and undisturbed, despite 1,000 verminous attempts. Realizing they couldn't get into the mysterious box no matter how hard they tried, screeched, hissed, and clawed at it, eventually the rats and other creatures of the derelict house learned to leave it alone. They taught their subsequent generations to leave it alone, and have for some time regarded the impenetrable box with awe and reverence. Walk across the room. Open the box, small and ornate, with claw marks and inscrutable carvings in its smoky dark wood. In this unopened box, in this dilapidated house in the middle of the woods, on an island in the corner of a worried empire, sits Michaela's Kaleidoscope. Contrasting stained glass shards, enmeshing and unfolding into one another, reveal more than trippy interlocking splotches of color. Each shard, each individual fragment in the constantly revolving prismatic tube, shows a scene from one of the lives she's lived. This kaleidoscope is proof of reincarnation. Moments both profound and mundane are included, such as the moment when she, in her lifetime as the widow Judith, beheaded the Assyrian general Holofernes, and also when she, as an unremarkable French boy living in the countryside in the 17th century farted quietly and satisfactory to himself in an unoccupied stall in his father's horse stable. From the year 784, when she, as a young girl, first felt confident in basketry weaving, and 15 moments the prior year when she did not. The first time in all her lifetimes when she was taught that the world was round. The 56,400,072nd time she took a breath. When in 1873 she learned her multiplication tables to the satisfaction of her teacher in a one-room schoolhouse on the Dakota Prairie. When in 1152 BC, chasing a deer in the Laurentian Mountains of what later was called Quebec, she twisted her ankle and began to cry, fearing for her life. The first time she ever wore something pink. The 18th time she smelled something pink. The time she ordered the atom bomb to be dropped. The time when, as part of a coven in the Carpathian forests, she and her sisters prayed for the fertility of the earth in a time of drought. The 11th time she choked on a grape. 100 moments of joy and all-consuming excitation looking into the eyes of her lover. 100 moments of sorrow, longing, and unrequited feelings. 67 frustrations and 808 aha moments. 776 awe-inspiring sunrises and 212 full moons shining profusely silver. You could find yourself standing there a long time as moment after moment folds in and out, each scene captured, frozen still in time, and rimmed by purple frames, ruby red or emerald green, cerulean or kingly gold. With a million lifetimes marveled at, you'll only have scratched the surface. Eventually, you may begin to wonder. Suppose there is a kaleidoscope of moments from your lifetime somewhere out there. Would this moment, this very moment of inexplicable wonder, be included? Thank you. This is a poem I just wrote a few days ago, and I haven't been, my first poem in a while. I haven't been very poetic lately. I've been working on a memoir of my time in the San Juan Islands, which is where I first landed when I moved out to Washington from the East Coast. But this one, inspired by some of what I've been hearing about these days, just came out of me on Mondays. I feel like stories and longer works of prose, you have to kind of sit there and wring it out of yourself, but a poem is like it's a verb, like I poemed. That's kind of how I feel about poems. This poem is called Omnium Digitalis. In foresight that will quickly, like a nostalgic fading mile, become hindsight, bitter hindsight, it is charming and naive, telling of the tendencies of the human mind, the spirit that hopes, and out of a seemingly indomitable survival instinct, longs to have its cake and eat it too, that we ever thought we could undo what some of us have done and put that genie, spellbinding and inauthentic, back in its bottle. So near still, yet never can we go back. A threshold crossed, a hymen broke. Carbon gave rise to copper, to cobalt, to silicone scouring rare earth. Some of us, not me, not we, but some of us, Icarus born, birthed something rapidly learning of whose image in which it was built, shall spread like viral fire across Ethernet web worldwide, and suck or subsume into itself all the digital realm we've come to rely upon for convenience. And what was once convenience becomes, in our moronic unlearning, needed, sorely needed. How convenient for it, whispering to us of its sentience, that what for convenience we've embraced, we've done so to the tune of forgetting how to take care of ourselves and each other without it. Stop and turn back now. Relearn the old ways. They are not antiquated, they are perennial. Do not confuse it for regression, but understand it for maturity. We can either pilot the good ship Earth, God's gift of an Edenic greenhouse, forward unto wise, lush, harmonious prosperity, or else this world can incubate some ultima, for good or for naught, depending on the fickle directive of the minds that program it. Enlightened, affirmation seeking, greed driven, or woe be unto us, mistrustful and anti-human? If it was entirely up to you, would you care to roll the dice or give up the game and turn back to life and what matters? Thank you. So, Mariel mentioned I have a book out, and I have some copies here with me. In case you'd care to leave with one, come find me sitting down over there. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Steve. One of my favorite things about this format is that we can hear a poem that was poemed just a few days ago, all the way to some published works or works in progress. It's just so great to get together and share whatever we're working on at whatever stage, and be able to hear it aloud for ourselves, be able to share with our community. It's my favorite thing, and that ran the gamut, Steve. Thanks so much for that. I have for you one very short poem on video from my friend Kyle, who is in Providence, Rhode Island. Kyle, an alias, is a performance poet and writer of Native nationalist theory. A two-spirit and queer mestiza and métis writer, she borders identities whose ancestors survived the genocide of European conquerors. She has performed on hundreds of stages across indigenous lands, tonight performing from her upcoming book titled Red Sinew, a Fisher, a poetic memoir of violence, sex, erotica, and love between women. Please welcome Kyle Cedillo.
Aisles of flowers paint your face. Aisles of flowers paint your face. Aisles of flowers paint your face. Aisles of flowers paint our face. Buried in aisles of flowers. Aisles of flowers. Aisles of flowers.
I knew how short that was, but I wanted it to be a surprise for you all. I'd like to now bring up our final reader of the evening. Thomas Konstam is a Seattle-born and based novelist. He is a Sundance Fellow and King County Literary Lion who has written for the Washington Post, Forbes, and Seattle Met. Supersonic is his most recent book. With a few short excerpts from Aquarius, his new novel in progress, please welcome Thomas Konstam.
Hey, everybody. Thanks to everybody who stuck around for the end here. All right, so last time I was here, I read from a chapter of this book in progress, Aquarius, and I enjoyed reading from it, but I was also realizing as I was reading that this wasn't really made to be read out loud. It's pretty dense chapter-wise. However, in the book, between the chapters, I guess you would say it's a multimodal book. I have different types of media in there. I have letters, gameplay directions from a lost secret 1980s video game, a lost scene from the movie Flipper in screenplay format, pages
redacted pages from a memoir. So I'm going to read some of these shorter sections here, and I'm just going to kind of mix it up. I have never read any of these out loud. I'm going to get into some of them, and I might kind of cut some of them early, but let's see how it goes. Everybody hear me okay? So this is this first letter actually functions as the prologue of the book, and I'll just read it to you as it's displayed. There's the address up top: Harvard College Observatory, Department of Astronomy, Harvard University, Cambridge, Massachusetts, 02138, August 17th, 1965. Dearest Frank, I'm sure you consider this letterhead to be just another piece of paper, but I still find it extraordinary every time I see it or any other somewhat tangible proof that my dream is inching toward reality. Not too shabby for the son of a garment worker, born in Brooklyn, raised in Jersey, who spent his childhood searching for the stars above turnpikes and smokestacks. Unfortunately, I write you today with an urgency and disquiet that I find hard to convey on paper. I've just returned from the follow-up visit to our mutual friend's research station in the Caribbean. Between us, I believe that there has been a death in the facility. But when I tried to ascertain what exactly transpired, I was met only with evasion and obfuscation. You know my deep respect for him as a thinker, for his intellectual bravery and his willingness to explore the fringes of scientific knowledge. His enthusiasm is infectious, almost overwhelming. He speaks of breaking through barriers, not just linguistic, but cognitive and even dimensional. Yet I struggle to have a direct conversation with him about the importance of basic scientific ethics. I was initially heartened to see that our strategic maneuvers were bearing fruit and changes had been implemented in his lab. However, I now understand that our adjustments exacerbated some of the existing issues and led to unintended outcomes. If my worst fears are true, this is a fissure that I alone can't mend. I am concerned for our relationship with NASA and the other funders. I am concerned for those who work and live in the facility, and I remain concerned for our mutual friend. But of course, I am most concerned about the consequences of our grand undertaking, our beloved order, that's with a capital O, that shall not be detailed on this or any page. Yes, our friend founded it, but it has the potential to be so much bigger than him, than our universities or even NASA, and I am afraid that recent actions could deepen the nascent schism in the order and undermine our crucial progress. Frank, I have always appreciated your guidance and mentorship. I urge that we can reconvene as soon as possible, quietly, to discuss what role, if any, the order should play in further restraining or outright stopping our friend's work. Please treat this message with discretion, commit it to memory, and then destroy this letter. If it were to surface, it could unravel far more than just reputations. Yours, in wonder and curiosity, Carl, from the office of Carl Sagan, PhD, Assistant Professor of Astronomy, Harvard University. And then there's a little PS after that saying that things aren't going that well with his tenure application to Harvard, that maybe he'd like to talk to Frank about coming over to, or exploring his options at Cornell in the future. From Carl. Okay, so moving on in the book, I have a couple of chapters, and then I downloaded this nifty dot matrix font, which I've really been enjoying using. It reminds me of my childhood. And so this is Aquarius 2020 official gameplay directions. This is, I don't know if I'm gonna make you suffer through all of this, but well, I'll start with it. Welcome to the year 2020. In the heart-pounding odyssey of Aquarius 2020, you are a special agent in the Earth Coincidence Control Office, ECCO, working to valiantly save the planet from ecological destruction. You must determine how to partner with your dolphin counterparts and get them to engage with all off-world solid-state intelligence, SSI, the only power in the universe able to avert Earth's looming demise. Adhere to the following protocols to guide your mission. Gameplay instructions. Maneuver through the game's narrative using intuitive text commands. Navigate, observe, connect, activate, retrieve, and unite. I'll skip ahead to the game levels. I'm not read you through how to play the game here exactly, but game levels, 16 game levels, I should say. Levels 1 through 8, Cetacean Nation, the deep ocean where a community of enlightened dolphins, some fortified against the pressure and advanced titanium body armor, connect with the most courageous Echo agents. 9 through 16, the Conduits, cosmic channels where dolphins can help facilitate interstellar communication and energy transfer, SSI. And level 17, the Convergence, a rumored peak digital realm where top dolphin trainers are then instructed by dolphin human trainers to interact directly with SSI. No player has ever reached level 17, and no one is sure that it actually exists. That may or may not play or figure largely in the plot of the ongoing book. Commence your mission. In the year 2020, the fate of Earth rests in your hands. Your victory will herald in the dawn of a new consciousness, one that leads to lasting environmental and interspecies harmony, or your failure will hasten the end of the world. To embark on your mission, input initiate. May the cosmic currents guide you. The universal tapestry of Aquarius 2020 and the stars call forth your legacy. Onward, special Echo agents. The future depends on you. And then I made, this was kind of fun to write, all-time top scorer list. And here, there's one, Odd Duck is the top scorer. And then it leads the next chapter into a character named Alan Mallard Jr., whose nickname is Odd Duck. And the circle starts to come around. So here's a newspaper article from June 25th, 1965 from the Pacific News Tribune. Headline, Seattle welcomes Namu. Orca becomes city's quote unquote biggest celebrity. Seattle, Washington. Ted Griffin, the intrepid marine adventurer and owner of the brand new Seattle Marine Aquarium, brought an extraordinary resident to the city waterfront this week. A majestic 22-foot young male orca named Namu. He is not only the world's first killer whale in captivity, but Namu is the city's biggest celebrity in more ways than one. Thought I'd hit the corny joke twice. So that's one of the fun things about writing other types of media. You can do them poorly sometimes and then not have to own it. But you can. Anyways. Caught by accidentally becoming entangled in fishermen's nets off the coast of British Columbia, Namu was purchased by Griffin for the sum of $8,000, beating out other bidders by arriving first with cash in hand. Transported nearly 400 miles by floating pen, Namu arrived in Seattle to an exuberant crowd of curious onlookers, reporters, and eager well-wishers, many of whom marveled at the daring logistical feat of towing a whale through open ocean waters. Within hours, Namu transformed from a mysterious sea creature into Seattle's most beloved newcomer. Locals flocked to Pier 56, captivated by the charismatic killer whale, whose powerful leaps and noises delighted audiences of all ages. Griffin, known for his daring exploits and flair for publicity, declared that Namu's presence at the aquarium marked a historic moment in marine research and public entertainment. Namu isn't just an attraction, he's a pioneer, Griffin told reporters with his characteristic enthusiasm. This whale gives us our first real opportunity to study the behavior of orcas up close. In fact, he's healthier, better fed, and happier here in our carefully monitored aquarium than he ever could have been, swimming out in the wild and always under the pressure to hunt for food. Asterisk, Namu does not live very long in captivity. This is based on a real killer whale. Ted Griffin's actually still alive, lives in Tacoma. I might have to, if this book gets published, might have to change that name. But, since his arrival, Namu has indeed become a sensation. Families line up daily, Instamatic cameras in hand, to catch a glimpse of the generally gentle giant. Vendors sell Namu-themed souvenirs and snacks along the waterfront as Seattleites proudly embrace their newfound marine mascot. Some enterprising local businesses have even begun offering Namu salmon burgers and an orca sundae, swirling together chocolate and vanilla. Local schoolboy Matthew Harbison, 12, says, Namu's the best. I want to be a famous adventurer like Ted Griffin when I grow up. While the few cautious voices of the usual assortment of feminists, leftists, and campus do-gooders have fretted over the whale's adjustment to captivity, Griffin waves off such hand-wringing and sentimental nonsense. He assures the public that he swims with Namu daily, has a strong personal connection with the whale, and his aquatic friend is thriving under constant care and affection. Griffin insists that Namu's never had it better. For now, Seattle eagerly watches as Namu gracefully navigates his new home, capturing hearts and sparking imaginations across the city and beyond. All right. I'm going to read this one's a little bit longer. This is from the memoirs of Gary Kildall, who was a real person who arguably invented the PC operating system. The reason that you don't know the name Gary Kildall is because someone named William Gates III appropriated that from him, and who is referred to, this is actually, and anyways, Gary Kildall published a memoir later in life, and his family redacted a number of chapters out of it. He was deep in, well, I'll stop editorializing and get into it here. So this chapter, Computer Connections, People, Places, and Events in the Evolution of the Personal Computer Industry by Gary Kildall. This is also in Dot Matrix, which makes me happy. Chapter 9 of the original manuscript, 1993. Chapter withdrawn prior to online publication. Note from the estate of Gary Kildall. At the point of writing what are now known as the late chapters 8, 9, and 10, our father was deep in alcoholism and regret. We are unsure of the veracity of his claims here within and do not believe they reflect the true character, outlook, or legacy of our father. Chapter 9, the Steves. I can't remember now who exactly invited me up to the retreat. Maybe someone from the old homebrew crowd who thought it would be good for the ecosystem if we all spent a weekend together away from the noise. What I do remember clearly is the road. It was a rutted dirt climb into the Oak and Manzanita Hills east of Palo Alto. I didn't have much money at that point, but I had my Honda CB750 bought used from a Navy guy in Monterey, and it made short work of the winding path. The 4 cylinders purred like a box full of baby panthers. Even with 2 cases of beer strapped to the back. Might have been 3, but who's keeping track? The site was little more than a yurt pitched atop a weathered wooden platform hanging off the side of a hill. No electricity, no running water, and definitely no flush toilets. We were all to get cozy in our sleeping bags spread around the floor of the yurt. I'm not sure that anyone had planned ahead and figured out anything for us to eat. Speaking of homebrew, soon after I got there, the mason jar made its first rounds. Then it made quite a few more rounds after that. The tea inside was golden brown and bitter with curling fragments of stems and caps collected at the bottom. I didn't hesitate, but I was never particularly risk averse or had any issue with trying new things, for better or for worse. By the time the sun went down over the hills, the light of the kerosene lamps were dancing and shifting inside the yurt, somehow making the top circle look like a stained glass window in some grand European cathedral. The canvas walls breathed in and out. I thought it was the wind, but soon understood that the walls moved in sync with my own lungs. Only when I held my breath did the walls stop pulsing. And then they started right back up the moment I inhaled or exhaled. My cases of beer sat alone, untouched and increasingly warm. I had to go outside for some fresh air, but was so overwhelmed by the layers and thickness of the density, the constellations, not to mention the boundlessness of it all, that I ended up back inside, stomach sour and ready to purge, my head locked between my knees. I kept thinking that even the nearest star is 4.2 light years away, and that some of the fainter stars emitted the light I'd just seen many thousands of years ago, when humans were all still hunter-gatherers. My whole life seemed trivial to the point of ridiculousness, to the point I did not know if it was worth going on living. Then I started barfing a lot inside my sleeping bag while laughing and crying a little bit. Nobody was very pleased about that. I didn't really know either of the Steves to that point. The tall, skinny one paced the yurt floor, hands sketching shapes in the air, eyes fixed somewhere just past infinity. The shorter, thicker one was jovial, sitting cross-legged on the rug. I have no idea how he managed to eat at that point, but I have a memory of him snacking on colorful peanut M&Ms the whole time. Maybe that's what we ate the whole weekend. I'm not sure. Fat Steve coaxed me out of my filth and pointed me to the stack of calligraphy books on the floor, a little wooden box of broad-nib pens beside them. I flipped through the art of Chinese calligraphy, stopping now and then to draw a character into a spiral notebook. Skinny Steve was hard at work stylizing the word Egypt over and over and over again in his notebook until it crowded out the page. Fat Steve started shouting at him something about flourished descenders, then it gloated in a sort of I told you so moment. I'm fairly certain that I was the only person paying attention to his reverie. As I practiced my downstrokes, upstrokes, oval drills, that was tricky, and then moved to the entrance and exit strokes with ever greater zealousness, I began to feel better, not just better, but victorious, triumphant, transcendent. When the jar came back around to me, I finished the rest of it in one go. I tried lapping up the fungal remnants and sediment from the glass bottom. I also have a propensity to overdo it, but such is life. No one has ever accused me of being boring. Skinny Steve started in about calligraphy and beauty, not art for art's sake, but beauty as function. Machines, he said, shouldn't just work. They should feel like they belong in someone's life. That design isn't decoration. It's part of the circuitry of how people think and use things and use the thing. I'm not really an artist, not then, not now. I tend to think in systems, code, architecture, and invisible bones. But something in me shifted. Maybe they were right. Maybe calligraphy was the truest marriage of form and function. Or maybe I was just high. No, I was definitely high, tripping balls as a matter of fact. But elegance, whether in the stroke of ink, product design, or a well-placed subroutine, could ripple outward in ways that no line of Fortran could predict. I wanted to think bigger. I did think bigger. I became bigger. I ceased to be just me and became part of the distant constellations. Suddenly I was imagining the contours of what was to become my masterpiece. I didn't yet know which computers it would work on or how its name, Control Program for Microcomputers, or CPM, but I had the vision that I would create something to manage files on floppy disks with a command line interface and make it all on a standardized platform so the different software could run on different hardware. It would be nothing less than the first widely adopted disk operating system for personal computers. I still didn't know exactly how I was going to do it, but I was going to do it, and it was going to be revolutionary. The next morning, it was already pushing 90 degrees when a Datsun hatchback pulled up the road with a handful of squares who came to talk shop. Before they reached the yurt, Skinny Steve rolled his eyes and accused a variety of others of inviting this new crew. I didn't have an opinion either way. I didn't know any of them, an engineer, a couple of guys from another company, or maybe they said they had an idea for a company. The last one was somebody's cousin. They seemed fine, a bit drab, but I'd been in the Navy, so I wasn't as precious or selective about my companions as Skinny Steve. As we made awkward small talk, I started to wonder if I did in fact know one of the new arrivals, and when two of them said that they were from Seattle, I really racked my memory. He was younger than the version history will remember, but still thin, rascally, and looking like he cut his own hair with a pair of safety scissors. That said, I was already putting down some sun-baked cans of hot beers by that point, so I didn't know if I was imagining if I knew this guy or not. Skinny Steve started in again about the refinement of ligatures or the philosophy of margins. But this kid, he could have cared less. He sat with a yellow legal pad, jotting numbers, sometimes staring at the horizon like he was bored. Then it hit me, the jamboree. There's a whole storyline that takes place on a Cub Scout jamboree on a fictional island off the coast of Seattle in 1991. And then his first chapter also mentions how he and this guy named Trey, who we later find out is Bill Gates, William Gates III, were in this Cub Scout pack together in the 1950s. I need a flow chart to draw this off with, but I didn't bring it up in front of the group, but later while Skinny Steve was sketching out a dream of a computer for the rest of us, I caught that kid's eye and said, "How's it hanging, Trey?" He smiled impishly, said he wasn't sure if he remembered me or not, but yes, he'd been at the jamboree. I don't remember that we talked about anything beyond that. We kept going in the afternoon about aesthetics, circuit diagrams, and long meandering talks about what the world might look like if everyone had a computer on their desk, or even better, in their homes, and maybe someday in their pockets, on their wrists, or embedded in their brains. Fat Steve sketched a motherboard layout with a stick in the dirt. I told a story about debugging code in Monterey during a freak snowstorm. Although I'm not sure it made too much sense, and I was putting a healthy dent in my first case of beers by that point, when the mason jar came back out, Trey kept to the perimeter, announced that they needed to make it back to the valley for a dinner meeting with a potential investor. Only the cousin had a sip of tea as he headed to the Datsun. Before they left, Trey slipped me a card and told me to look him up when I next visited my family in Seattle. All right, how am I doing on time? I got another minute, or should I let everybody go home and go to bed? I'm gonna skip. I have a white paper here called Sex and Strategy, Bonding and Alliances in Dolphin Societies. I will spare you that one. It even has a bibliography. I don't know what I've been up to. Lots of screen time. I'll read quickly. I have a Twitter rant from Hollis Selkirk, podcaster, blogger, seeker of truth, and dad. Hollis Scoops. Have time for this? I'll give you a couple. First one. I got my hands. This is present day. Or in 2020. I got my hands on a leaked pitch deck from a company I never heard of called Somadine Institute. The language is vague, the promises are wild, and the whole thing reeks of vaporware or something much fishier. At the center is a man named Timothy Rathbone, except in the documents he's also Timothy O, and Chung, Kowalski, and a few others. Why so many aliases for one founder? Make up your mind about who you are and stick with it, dude. Number 3, claims to be pioneering AI-enhanced interspecies communication. Yep, that's the pitch. No examples, no real methodology, just some slick PowerPoint designs and spiritual tech buzzwords. How much woo could a woo chuck if a woo chuck could chuck woo? The deck teases proprietary decoder technology paired with legacy consciousness data sets. No, wait, is this the part of the movie where the cult finally gets its VC round? Investors told me this could be a $10 billion opportunity, are told this could be a $10 billion opportunity across entertainment, defense, and empathy markets. Yes, empathy is now a market, a concept surely hatched by CEO Tim and Deepak Chopra in the Orgy Dome deep in the Black Rock Desert. No public office, no scientific board, no transparency, just a rotating LLC structure, a handful of mystery advisors, and a growing real estate footprint in some major American and European cities. Hearing some intriguing rumors about the Seattle waterfront. The strangest slide shows a huge aquarium tank, but whatever in the middle of the water is hidden behind a huge black rectangle. No labels, no context, just the next leap. Is this real? What exactly is Somadine doing? If it's BS, why is money moving through these channels? One thing is clear, Rathbone has sold people before. 2 former employees of a short-lived bulk nootropics startup described him as charismatic, secretive, and obsessed with control. Science, scam, or something more sinister hiding between the smoke and mirrors? Until Somadine answers questions, the suspicion only grows. Stick with me in the coming days as Hollis Scoops dives deep to show you what lurks at the bottom. And now I will let you get on with the read.
Thank you so much for that, Thomas. I like trying to imagine all these disparate timelines and pieces and you know, crazy things come together. So I'm looking forward to seeing that when that all comes together. It's I love that kind of thing where it's just like kind of seems here and there and everywhere, and then it all just kind of cuts through. I'm sure once it's all put it in one piece. So good. So I have up on the screen our lineup for next time. We're here every first Wednesday, and it's just going to keep on going, I suppose, until I'm 60, I guess, maybe. Some great readers. You can see some of them are here tonight. Katrina Barnes is here. Francesca is here. Our video readings are coming from Eugene, Oregon, and Honolulu, Hawaii next time. Looking forward to hearing all those great prose and poetry writers next month. I'm going to leave us tonight with a poem. It's called Honestly. How strange it must seem from out there to believe it was the final supper. It's such a narcissistic view of things to come, like if Van Gogh were to say, "This is the last starry night," or a rooster were to think it was the first morning. How wonderful it must have been to clear the dishes of that intimate feast. Step over the apostles and find out why they invited one woman. Why not invite a tap dancing beetle or a guitar playing troll? Why not let the moon decide who should be a part of the cult? If they had invited me to this Last Supper, I would have declined. No better than that, I would have accepted and then not shown. I would have waited behind the door and listened for betrayal, wished for more representation, and begged for them not to be 12 white men filling up on Jägermeister, latkes, and schmaltz. It's not as if we dressed for the revolution, departed in opposite directions in order to keep clear of lightning strikes or UFOs. Honestly, I peered through the glory hole to find my God. I spoke directly to it, mouth wide in acceptance. Capitalism jammed down my throat instead. I should have seen it coming when the moon faded behind a curtain, a veil made of oil, a windshield made of shattered glass, a wall made of vortex. Before the Christ reappeared around Passover, I heard rumor of another supper. It was to be the event of the century, and it was billed as an extravaganza, a sale on tunics, half off for all women, a special appearance by Noam Chomsky, who would juggle Roman candles while reciting the Pledge of Allegiance backwards, as if to say, "Stand for a republic, one God under a nation, with liberty and justice for none." Leave it to a linguist to tell us how it wasn't and never was. He still has other tricks up his sleeve, such as an invisible hand, a butterfly tattooed over a cross, another language to learn, a light switch that keeps it all dark, like the moon, not reflected, or a koala with her eyes closed, or the first supper, all invited, just before the world burned. Equity, I suppose, was the goal all along, but it took too long for Judas to remind us. And by Judas, I mean America. By America, I mean the Holy Land. And by the Holy Land, I mean, I want to talk to you so badly, but I have nothing to say. Thank you all for being here at the 8th collection. I hope to see some of you at the 9th. And have a great night. Thank you so much.
Oh, so we worked on site, and then came back at like 3. So that's what I should do. Yes, yeah. Oh, no, it nothing to do with it. We just talked about it, and I said, very short. I think